Why would I go anywhere with you?
Don't you want to fight these bastards for real?
Rebellions are built on hope by people willing to get their hands dirty. Andor, Disney Plus's newest Star Wars story, shows us the first steps of Cassian Andor's journey to becoming A1 rebel scum. Directed by Toby Haynes, Andor's 3-episode premiere does a lot to show the total dysfunction of Imperial rule and why dudes like Cassian can just stroll into Imperial facilities whenever they want to. We'll break all that down, plus a pretty major Dark Forces Easter egg, but before we get to all that, I have to warn you, we are about to spoil everything that went down in Andor's premiere, so if you don't want to hear about it, now is the time to hit the bricks like the Empire's got a warrant out for your arrest.
Everything I did, I did for the rebellion.
Okay, now that we're past the spoiler warning, let's get right to our big takeaways from the first 3 episodes. It's 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, and Cassian Andor is more of a petty crook than a rebel agent. After a run-in that left a couple private security goons dead by his hand, Cassian went on the run. But from what we've learned about his past, he's been on the run for a while. He's already a fugitive from the world Kenari, a planet ruined by an Imperial mining operation, possibly supplying the Empire's big, huge, top-secret construction project, which Cassian may have something to do with later on. So when Cassian meets Luthen Rael in what looks like a botched black market deal for some Imperial tech, Luthen's real interest is in recruiting a guy like Cassian to help fight the Empire. Luthen offers Cassian a way out, and they escape together, and the Imperial security contractors who were there to arrest Cassian for his double homicide are left in the dust. Okay, that's quite a lot to lay on you all at once, so let's recap the premiere a bit and show how we wound up here. After seeing this show in action, we understand why Disney decided to drop the first 3 episodes in one go. Andor is a pretty slow burn, and that's by no means a bad thing. The show is taking its time fleshing out Cassian in both past and present tense. His ongoing misadventures on Morlana 1 and Ferrix are interspersed with flashbacks to his childhood on Kenari, where he became a fugitive from the Empire at a very young age through no actions of his own. We start out on Morlana 1, where Cassian visits the first brothel we've seen on screen in the Star Wars galaxy. This might be tame compared to the bordellos and cat houses you'd see in an HBO show, but it's already setting a notably more mature tone than other recent Star Wars fare.
Agreed! Let us dispense with the pleasantries.
Cassian isn't there for hanky-panky though, he's looking for somebody from Kenari, namely his sister. A couple security officers get jealous at Cassian's seemingly preferential treatment, and it's clear they're on a power trip because they're on the payroll of the Empire. Like a couple middle school bullies, they jump Cassian on his way home, and he's forced to kill them both. After he does this, he immediately flees to Ferrix, a world in the Morlani system where a bunch of shipbreaking is going on. We saw a bit of this in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order's opening scene. They're breaking down all the Republic-era warships so they can be replaced with new, sleek Imperial vessels, and presumably recycle some of the parts for, I don't know, other projects, like maybe like a big ball that blows up planets. Just a thought. Anyway, it's here on Ferrix that we meet a few key characters from Cassian's circle. There's his charming droid, B2 Emo, who's probably got some R2 unit DNA but with a boxier form factor and the ability to speak basic rather than just beeps and whistles of binary. He doesn't actually belong to Cassian, but rather Marva, played by Fiona Shaw. Through flashbacks, we learn that her relationship with Cassian goes back to his time on Kenari. After going to investigate a crashed Republic ship, a member of Cassian's tribe killed one of its surviving crew members in self-defense. Marva and her partner Clem showed up to scavenge parts from the ship before a rescue operation showed up, and upon seeing Cassian, she insisted on taking him with her, knowing full well that his entire tribe would be wiped out for killing that one officer, even if it was in self-defense. She zaps Cassian with some crazy knockout gas and rescues him. From a certain point of view, this non-consensual rescue of an unconscious minor could be considered kidnapping, I'm just saying, Evidently there are no hard feelings though, and back in present day, Cassian sees Marva as something of a mother figure, and he really looks out for her well-being, but also keeps her in the dark about his less than legal side ventures. Cassian wastes no time establishing an alibi with the help of his colleague Brazo, who begrudgingly agrees to cover for him. Some other key players are Bix Colleen, Cassian's machinist friend who's trying to help him escape authorities for that whole murder business outside the brothel. Then there's Tim Carlo, her jealous boyfriend, who effectively does the exact opposite mission to hers, snitching out Cassian to the authorities. Speaking of whom, there's Cyril Karn, deputy inspector of the corporation/effective government of Morlana 1, who has made it his mission to try and hunt down Cassian. Like I mentioned before, this 3-episode prelude is a pretty slow burn, but what it amounts to is showing Cassian Andor's transition from a lower-level ruffian to one of the most dedicated leaders in a young, growing rebel alliance. The timeline in his childhood, when he's known as Casa, shows the beginnings of his hatred of Imperial forces, with them being responsible for both the destruction of his home planet and the maiming and/or death of one of his childhood friends. When Marva and Clem kidnap/adopt him, it can be presumed that after that, his ties with Kenari and everyone he ever knew were lost. His name was changed from Casa to Cassian, and his history was rewritten to come from the Outer Rim planet of Fest, not Mid-Rim Kenari. Most of Cassian's present-day trouble in the show comes from him killing those two doofuses outside the brothel, and then the pursuit that follows by Deputy Inspector Karn. Cassian told a worker at the bordello he was looking for a Kenari woman, his sister, and that's the Morlana 1 corporate authority's best clue in pursuing him, at least until friggin' Tim decides to drop a dime and snitch him out. We've seen plenty of Imperial incompetence on display, from stormtrooper marksmanship to misconduct on the part of certain Dark Lords of the Sith in managerial positions, but Andor shows us a new crack in the Empire's armor that paved the way for the rebellion. Imperial operatives willing to look the other way so they don't have to report any bad news to their superiors, because being part of the Empire, just a day job. Security contractors are a new cog in the Imperial war machine that we haven't really seen too closely before. If the uniforms don't give it away, the main bad guys so far at Andor aren't officially part of the Empire, but rather an organization that's been hired by the Empire to keep local systems in line. They might think of themselves as elite PMC operators, but they seem a little more like rent-a-cops. Some of them are a lot more ambitious than others, and if it weren't for young up-and-comer Cyril Karn's dedication to law and order, Cassian's little run-in on Morlana might have been swept under the rug, and this show would have been about 11 episodes shorter. His boss is the one who was going to report it to the Empire, and he was not thrilled at the idea of having to explain that 2 men under his command had been murdered, specifically while they were out drinking and patronizing local houses of ill repute. Karn, of course, was not having it, and his fellow contractor, Sergeant Kostek, was right there with him and more than happy to gas him up about how much justice must be served. So Karn spun up a full-scale investigation, and his prime suspect was the star of our show. Fast forward 2 episodes and 1 impassioned speech, and Karn and Kostek are leading a strike force to Ferrix in search of one Cassian Andor. What could possibly go wrong? The last we saw of Karn, he was catatonic, and it looks like he realized a couple things. 1, war is hell and he's responsible for the deaths of his men, and 2, he's gonna have to explain those deaths to his supervisors, along with why they're short 1 ship, and why he doesn't have anything to show for it. If Karn was reporting directly to Darth Vader, we'd be worried, but getting force-choked is above his pay grade. Our gut feeling? Karn will draw attention away from his failed mission by ratting out his commanding officer to his Imperial superiors, who will undoubtedly have some questions about this little snafu. Karn might have dropped the ball, but he also sussed out Cassian Andor and showed his true colors as an Imperial sympathizer/enthusiast, so maybe before this is over, he'll trade in his blue and orange duds for some Imperial officer olive drab. But hey, Karn, a little career advice?
Be careful not to choke on your aspirations.
The Empire isn't infallible. They've made several Star Wars films that demonstrate exactly that, but this situation is interesting because it shows how thin the Empire has spread itself at this point. The Empire took control thanks to a grand army of soldiers cloned from an elite mercenary, but by 5 years before Yavin, they've resorted to farming out work to dudes who have more Paul Blart in their DNA than Jango Fett. Anyway, we already know the end of Cassian's story thanks to Rogue One, but 3 episodes into Andor, we're beginning to piece together the beginning. He's about to take his first steps into a larger world, and with 9 episodes left this season, we are really curious and excited to see where he goes next. We don't have a ton of Easter eggs this week, but like we mentioned in the intro, the one we got is a deep cut from Star Wars video game history. If you thought Cassian's blaster looks like an elegant weapon from a more civilized, expanded universe, you are not alone. It bears quite the resemblance to the Bryar Pistol wielded by Kyle Katarn. This was first introduced in the no longer canon PC game Star Wars Dark Forces. The first level of that game? Oh, just stealing some Death Star plans, no big deal. And this wouldn't be the first Disney Plus show to mine Dark Forces either. The rest of that game was all about stopping the production of these things called Dark Troopers, who you might recall showed up in great numbers in Mando Season 2. What did you think of the Andor premiere, and what about this bleak portrayal of living under the Empire? Let us know what you think in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching this episode of Canon Fodder. For more top secret Imperial science project, check out how the Bad Batch sets up like 50 plus years of Imperial cloning shenanigans, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.